Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Yankee Doodle Bugs, and with me today to sing Yankee Doodle is my good friend SC McPeter. Say hi.
What's up, Doc?
So as mentioned, this is a review for Yankee Doodle Bugs, released on the 28th of August 1954. It's the 719th of the series, and it's directed by Friz Freleng. You can find this beautiful restoration on the Bugs Bunny 80th Blu-ray set, and I have a link below to that set, because you won't find it on YouTube unless Warner Brothers themselves choose to upload it. But in case you haven't seen this one, you have the world-famous Clyde Bunny character trying to study for a test in regards to American history, and Bugs then offers to help, and he tells his version of what really happened in American history, which pretty much involves inserting himself into each and every important event. And we'll go through all of that throughout the review. But in terms of trivia, there's really two main ones, but the other stuff and the other references we'll go through as we go through the short itself, because this was actually chock full of different references. But the two main ones, it's a second and final appearance of Clyde Bunny in the Golden Age, and I guess we can all say, "Aww," because it's really sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's such a shame that this great, memorable character, he only got used twice.
It's sad, and at least he goes out on a high note, because unlike the first short, which was the cheetah short, in this one, it's not. So Clyde at least gets a bit of an upgrade for the second short, and that's why that Bugs Bunny 80th set is a must-own. Not for the other stuff, but it's for the complete Clyde Bunny filmography. That's why you buy it. Nothing else. All right?
Screwy little cuss, ain't
Yeah.
he?
Hey, if it's a need, I guess, and I guess it has to be a nephew, because if it's Bugs Bunny's son, you gotta show them Bugs is married and all this other stuff.
It makes the character look too
Yeah.
old for people to like.
Exactly. But for the purposes of the story, it's fine. There's nothing really wrong with him. We kidded that.
I was curious if he was a comic character. No, this was just something that they did on their own.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, a little weird. I'm surprised that he wasn't a comic character in any way, because it feels like that kind of character that would have been in the comics, but I guess not. Weird.
Yeah, I'm sure that Bugs had plenty of different relatives all throughout whether the comic books or the comic strip. And I guess other versions of him appeared in more modern versions of Looney Tunes, but as far as Golden Age goes, it's just two appearances. This short might be familiar to you if you've watched Old Glory, which is a Porky Pig short that Chuck Jones directed, which is one of their more very serious shorts, which is about American history. But they both start the same. They both involve the younger protagonist saying, "Oh, why do I have to learn about American history? This is so boring. I'll never get it together. This is pointless. Why am I doing this?" And then you have a character. So in Old Glory, you have Uncle Sam, and here you have Uncle Bugs. They're explaining about the history, but Old Glory was more serious, where he would go on about the land of the free and all that, whereas here, Bugs just comically inserts himself as though it's real history. It's the same idea. But which of the two do you prefer?
You have to make me choose between this and Old Glory.
Yeah.
I feel like Sylvester rummaging through the garbage bin. I'm sorry, but I would have to say Old Glory just because it's a weird one. Both Old Glory and this cartoon have sort of overcluttered design, and I'll get into that later.
At least Old Glory has that wonderful Bomber Kimpson animation where you think it's rotoscope, but it's actually not. So at least it's got that going for it and some other nice stuff in it. And this one has some nice backgrounds, which we will touch upon, because you've got some things to say about it, and of course I do as well. But I guess, yeah, we'll go through it all and point out the backgrounds and all the references herein. But when it starts off, I do like the title card and the rendition of Yankee Doodle here. I'm surprised they picked that music cue. I was shocked. Were you shocked?
I would not have known that was a music cue unless our good friend Manny Cruz hadn't just told
Yeah,
us.
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I do agree it's a good rendition.
Yeah, so at least we got that going. So we start off with Clyde just lying on the floor doing his history homework, and he's scratching down important dates in history, and he's like, "Oh, I give up." Look at the design here. One thing you'll notice in this short is that when you're in the bits with Bugs, it looks quote unquote realistic. It's a modern design, yes, but at least it's realistic somewhat, right? But then once we see the historical segments, they appear more like storybooks. They appear very stylized, very UPA, which we'll touch upon. But Personally, I
Yeah.
like it.
I think it's really overcluttered in a lot of the shots. Some shots are better than others, but this feels like a cartoon where Holly Pratt and Friz Freleng were trying to experiment with doing UPA cartoons. And again, I feel like this must have been some sort of contract obligation to use the character again. And I don't think Freleng or Foster really wanted to do that. They just came up with the character for a cheater. And I guess the cheater, because it had great cartoons in it, was received well enough where Warner's demanded another cartoon, and they just used it as a way to test UPA designs. The character designs actually get it down really well, but the backgrounds, I just don't like them. It's too much of one color for dominating each of the shots. Like Bugs' house, when the floor and the wall are entirely pink with some white being used, it's just too much pink. Like even at UPA for the books in the shot where he is reading, and the only white is like the little white in the walls and some of the books. Even UPA would have given a little like impressionist paint on the books to make it a little bit less saturating. It just doesn't work. And this was an issue that Freleng and Pratt had for a few cartoons until right before the shutdown began.
So it seems to me that at least they were attempting it to see why UPA style worked the way it did versus what they did. Now, to my eyes, but then again, I'm not an artist, I'm not an animator, and to me, it looks good. I will confess that some scenes, yeah, perhaps it was a little bit too overpowering, but I guess you got to start
Yeah.
somewhere.
They got it down well enough after a few cartoons, but it's just a little overbearing for these and a few others. Like, we're recording Goo Goo Goliath after this one, and I can't say that cartoon has a little bit better, but there are still plenty of shots where it's just too much of one color.
But one thing they will stick with, and as they improve the colors, of course, are the 50s human designs, which have already sort of started by this point. You'll see a lot of incidental characters looking quote unquote ugly, right? But here they go even one step further, and from here on, right up until the very end, they stick with this sort of design aesthetic versus the 1940s type characters like Bugs Bunny here.
Yeah. It's almost sort of jarring to see Bugs next to these sort of characters that are only designed to be viewed in one way. And the animators got it down pretty well of how to draw these characters as well. Holly Pratt was exceptional at both character and background layout. Again, even if I don't really like the color styles of the backgrounds, I can't deny that they're at least nicely designed regardless. But I think we're talking so much about design that we're sort of forgetting what happens in this cartoon.
Well, one thing about Bugs is interesting. I mean, this is probably one of the most egotistical shots I've ever seen. So you got Bugs Bunny sitting there. He's reading a Bugs Bunny comic while in the background, because we're speaking about backgrounds, I know, we see some pictures of Bugs Bunny. So it's, I guess, this is him on a day off. I don't know, but
Wow, we're getting some real exciting Bugs Bunny stories. Bugs Bunny on his day off.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, you can see those beautiful poses he does in the background. He's like, look at my range and all that.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I do like those little stylized bugs on the
yeah,
background.
so at least that brings.
And I do like, I don't know if they were intending to make his head a little wider in order to stylize it a little bit better, but Bugs just looks so cute in the Freeling cartoons. I can't help but say
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it looks pretty good.
It isn't overdone like some of the later Jones cartoons can be, but it's just a perfect kind of
Yeah,
cuteness.
exactly. And sure enough, Bugs overhears is like, oh, I'll help you. I've lived these history. Says versions of the history, and a lot of it involves him. Again, egotistical much.
Mhm.
You know, the fact that he was in
Yeah.
important parts of history, though not in the first part. I mean, I guess he's not that old, right? But the first
Mhm.
part, we see that Manhattan wasn't a bustling city, but it's filled with, well, Indian teepees or Native American teepees.
You can still see some of those in some old parts of New York City.
Yeah, and yeah, the Statue of Liberty was just a little girl at the time.
That's my favorite design in this cartoon. I just like how cute little Statue of Liberty
Yeah.
is. And it really does look like a children's book drawing of the time, like the thing I'd see in a Little Big Book or something like that nature.
Yeah, and of course, yes, we know it's an anachronism because Statue of Liberty was brought over by the French much later on, but whatever, for the gag, it's fine. And if you listen very carefully to the music, it sounds like Yankee Doodle, but done like Native American music.
Sort of a running theme throughout a lot of the cartoon.
The skyline wasn't always like it is today with its tall buildings and concrete canyons. It was much more primitive when the Indians owned the island.
The Dutch buying Manhattan from the Indians, as Bugs Bunny says it, and the situation is a lot more complex, but essentially, this person here buying Manhattan for a song, ha ha, is Peter Minuit, who was credited with purchasing the island of Manhattan from Native Americans in exchange for what's been said to be roughly the equivalent of $1,000 today. So, again, for a song, hence the pun. Now, I asked our mutual friend Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, regarding that song because we see a music sheet and I have no idea what on earth that song actually is. And Manny was able to identify it as a Picture of Mary. That's a song where the first line is, I see a maid beside a rippling stream, the golden sunset, 2 eyes of brown and a bonnet of blue, and so on. And we see that the chief here is, I'm rich, and he gets all excited. But this song is not really a song that many people would know today. What would make this gag work a lot better, in my view? But I guess we've got the benefit of hindsight here, is if he bought, I don't know, Jingle Bells, Rockabye Baby, something like that.
Well, he got scammed. That's the joke.
Yeah, but the fact is yelling, I'm rich, I don't know. I could see it both ways, because this song, very obscure, and it took Manny a while to actually even find it.
Thanks, Manny, for finding it.
Yeah, exactly. So at least we know what the song is, because I thought, oh, is the gag that he got some really famous song at the time? But no, it's something pretty obscure. So anyway, whatever.
I wonder if Stalin or Freeling picked the song, because that seems like a deep dive. And again, the joke is definitely that the natives got scammed. But whoever picked that song definitely had a good thought.
Yeah, but so people can let us know in the comments, do you think the gag would have worked better if maybe they had a better song? I don't know. But anyway, so that's pretty much what that whole scene is referencing anyway, what that song actually is. As we move on to, I don't know if this is Bugs or his ancestor, but we just go with it, won't we? So we see that Bugs interacts with Benjamin Franklin on the day that Franklin discovers electricity. So he even calls him Benny, which is a nice touch. I like that. I'm trying to discover electricity. And, Mel Blanc does pretty much all the voices here. And there's even a reference that he has to get out the first edition of the Saturday Evening Post. So they're putting together a lot of what Franklin did in one scene, right? It didn't quite happen this way, but go for it.
What's up, Benny?
I am trying to discover electricity.
That's nice.
Wouldst thou tend to my kite, Master Bunny?
It wouldst be a pleasure to tend to ye kite, sir.
I thank ye. I must get out ye first edition of ye Saturday Evening Post.
The gags in this, again, as it tells American history, it's almost a throwback to the Spot Gag cartoons from like the Avery period to World War II. The constant puns and the cheap jokes. But one thing that I did like, and I've noticed Freeling has been doing this a lot recently, is the lighting gags on characters, because it happens to Bugs here, and it happened in Muzzletuff, and it happened in another cartoon, I believe.
The gag in this one is that it's actually Bugs that discovered electricity. He's all flashing, and Franklin takes the credit saying, hey, I discovered electricity. He discovered electricity. Huh.
I've discovered electricity! I've discovered electricity!
He discovered electricity.
But one thing I noticed in this scene, though, and I guess this is one of the flaws as well, like you said about the backgrounds being overpowering and so on, which, I can agree to a point, But I noticed that a lot of the direction in these scenes are very flat. There's like no depth. So they're directed like a storybook that you could just take pictures of this and make a book out of it pretty much.
Yeah. It's just too much. Again, it took Freeling and Pratt a few cartoons to figure this sort of design style out, but they had the character designs at least down. I'll give them that.
Yeah. But the next bit is about the Boston Tea Party. And, okay, I chuckled at the fact that everyone talks about the whole tax issue, TAX, but what's really supposed to be is that it's tax, TACKS. By who we see here is the Mad King George III, who was rumored to have bipolar disorder, hence why he was seen as mad. Okay. But I love the timing in this with the soldiers sort of marching to the actual drum beat. That was done really well, I thought. And I like how he just enters. He goes, spread these tacks on the colonists' tea. But your majesty, these are carpet tacks. And he just dumps the tacks in a fit of insanity, and that's that.
The king! Spread these tacks on the colonists' tea. But your majesty, these are carpet tacks. Well, they're tea tacks now!
It would have just been fine if he had just dumped the tax, and they didn't need to over highlight what kind of tax they are. But I guess it does highlight how mad he was. Although, again, too many puns in this one, I guess, for me.
Yeah, but I liked it because I guess, like a lot of
Yeah.
people, I'm not a fan of tax, the TAX kind
Yeah.
anyway.
I like how as he goes into the scene a little bit and exits, you have these two people holding on to the back of his robe or whatever. And they look like the little girls in Madeline, which I'm sure was a direct idea to emulate UPA design.
Yeah, it seemed like it. But I had a look at this next bit, which is the whole fishbowl blindfold getting number for the army draft bit, which takes place very quickly. And sure enough, that actually does reference something. There are pictures, in fact, involving the peacetime military draft lottery drawing the first number from a giant fishbowl to announce who's the first person drafted. That's what's pretty much referencing to. And by this point, the draft had, after World War II, stopped, but then it restarted again once the Korean War started and continued on all throughout the Vietnam War and so on. So pretty obscure, I guess. But who is the person that got drafted first? Oh, it's George Washington.
This is perhaps the most jarring part of the background design, where it goes from this gray and white to green again. And it bothered my eyes so much just for it to go from all that white and gray to green. Although I have to concede, on a solo basis, the shot of Washington walking out onto his porch is almost the best background in this entire cartoon. Just with the fact it gets some of the overlap in the impressionist painting a little bit better. Although I think some of the designs where there's a bit more color than just 3, like maybe when Clyde is sitting on the couch with Bugs and there's a little bit more white in the background, is a better one. Again, it's just too overbearing.
Gadzooks, I've been drafted. Martha, you'll have to run the candy stores alone while I'm off to fight the war.
Well, there's an interesting reference to this one where there's a whole thing about a candy shop. Oh, Martha, you'll have to look after the candy store alone. I'm off to fight the war. And he goes up and yells out charge. And this appears to be a reference to the Martha Washington candy stores that were established in the late 1890s. And on top of that, it's been said that the Washingtons themselves were all very fond of chocolate, and chocolate at the time was done a little bit differently and so on. There's actually a whole thing about it online, which I won't get into, but you got a double reference there. You got the candy shop, Martha Washington's, and you got them loving chocolate historically.
Who says Bugs isn't teaching Claude American history?
Yeah, especially to Aussies like me too, because I didn't know that. So there we are. But some of this stuff you look at and go, now come on, it has to reference something. And sure enough, it actually does. So we see Bugs approach Betsy Ross's home, and she's doing the American flag after a few failed attempts, including one which some people absolutely wouldn't be able to stand today, while others constantly use, and I'll let you guys guess which one that is. So it's like, hiya, Bets, how's the flag coming? And it's like, how's this, Mr. Bunny? And sure enough, Bugs is like, hey, it's missing something, and then there's a rake that appears for like a brief moment, and it's like, oh, it's stars.
Hiya, Bets. How's the flag coming along?
How's this, Mr. Bunny?
Not bad, Betsy. Not bad. But that blue field, it's too plain. It needs something. Now, let's see. What could we put in the blue field to snap it up a bit?
Ha ha. How's this for an idea? And that's how the flag was created, I guess.
I like the George Washington slipped here sign. It almost gives you an idea of what the gag's going to be, of how he gets the stars. And I like the animation. I'm pretty sure it's by Art Davis, of Bugs hitting the rake, because you can tell it's him because it's a little bit looser on Bugs, and he can almost look a little deranged in some of the looser drawings. But he would do even looser work when the studio reopened, which I like a lot, just because he got to really do things in his New York way a lot more.
Yeah. Because you also then have the fact that Betsy Ross is here and she's depicted as an older lady, which historically, based on her birth year, she would have been like in her 20s. So I guess they just wanted to reuse a kind of sort of granny design from the Sylvester Tweed shorts. I don't know, whatever.
When I was a child, I do remember that they would talk about her as being an old lady, even though she wasn't. I guess because sewing is associated with the elderly woman. That might be why. But yeah, she was in her 20s.
Yeah, we just go with it, and And that's that. But yeah, historically, she would have been, 20-something-year-old woman according to her birth year. But anyway, so we get the scene here, which is very economic. And again, this is them experimenting with the UPA, I guess, movement when it comes to animation. So the enemy storms Bunker Hill and a cannon's pointed right at him. And the cannon goes off, the enemy is surprised, and they turn around.
Very inaccurate interpretation of the Bunker Hill battle, in which the British did actually win, but at a very high casualty.
Yeah. But still, the direction I thought was pretty funny. It's like, again, very economical, but I don't know, I like it. The next bit, though, is probably one of my favorite bits. It may be my favorite bit in the short, and that's the Battle of Valley Forge with the hardship of 6 feet of snow and all that stuff. That ice cream wagon, I mean, come on. And of course, it's playing Yankee Doodle again.
Yeah.
I mean, why? It's just.
Also, the Valley Forge, I feel like they went to Valley Forge 2 years in a row, which I can't remember which winner was harder at the moment. I believe it was the winner of 77 or 78 that was the hardest one, but I just can't believe that Bugs doesn't mention which year, although it is fine. These winter backdrops are also a lot more pleasing than some of the other shots, like the one of the ice cream bar. Although, considering those guys were malnourished, they would probably have had those anyway.
Would they have had an electric blanket?
Well, Ben Franklin just invented electricity, didn't
Yeah,
he?
so I guess there you go. It all fits. It all fits together. One little neat package. And next up, in the best dad joke of the whole thing, come on, admit it, you chuckled at the enemy fleet was all bottled up. Come on, just say
Yeah.
you liked it. Come on. There's no shame.
Yeah, I did like this joke. But again, just as a whole, this cartoon has too many puns. It needed more.
Yeah. And of course, we see George Washington crossing the Delaware River. And yeah, of course, Bugs has a motor on the boat because why not?
It looks like they tried designing it based on the famous painting. But I must say that Bugs with the red nose, he looks like he took something before the ride.
Yes, yeah, and we'll say no more. So, sure enough, you better hop along, Cassidy. And he sends Clyde off to school, which he should have studied the day before, but whatever. Maybe he's better at cramming at the last minute. Who knows? Hop along, Cassidy is a reference to a fictional cowboy that was in books and later on movies as well, just in case people were wondering. And now they can sleep soundly at night too.
Yeah, and the grasshopper's name in a Hop a Skip a Chump is Hopalong Cassidy.
Yep. So there we are. So that's where that comes from. And yeah, after Bugs tells Claude all these important events, the school bell rings. And sure enough, later on in the day, Clyde returns home with a sour look on his face. Well, how did you make out in your history exam? Does this answer your question? And sure enough.
It's the best played out part in this whole cartoon because it actually involves characters a little bit more.
And he's done.
I guess this is why they didn't make any more, because Clyde finally learned not to believe Bugs Bunny. When you watch the cartoon's ridiculous, but makes sense. Meanwhile, Bugs is still reading his Leon Schlesinger's Comics and Stories magazine.
Yeah, which is very important, of course. That's definitely something that needed to be looked at. So maybe he's just reviewing to make sure the books are going okay. Who knows? But I'd like to think it's for his ego.
Just want to reiterate again that while some of the backgrounds in this are pleasing, I just think it took Freeling and Pratt a few cartoons. This one, Google Goliath, Stork Naked, just a little bit to figure out how to do UPA backgrounds. It's not like these cartoons are bad. They just needed a little bit, like any artist would.
Yep, for sure. This one, I do remember seeing in some form when I was younger, and I'm trying to picture where I would have seen it because I do remember the whole dunce thing at the end, but I don't remember the short itself. So maybe I saw it as a compilation movie. Maybe I saw it as part of some other thingy, and that ending scene was tacked on at the end. I don't recall, but all I remember is the last bit. But watching this one, look, I commend Friz Freeling for at least experimenting even at this stage. He's sort of on autopilot with the Sylvester and Tweety shorts. So it's nice to see him do other things, and whether they succeed or not is another thing entirely. Here, I like the look of the backgrounds. I do agree some of them are overpowering, but it's still a treat to see him do something new. Entertainment-wise, it's fine for a chuckle. If it's on, it's worth watching. Is it memorable? Perhaps not. But I don't know. This one gets a 7.5 out of 10. It's fine. If it's on, I'll watch it. But it's nothing too remarkable.
I'll just give it a 7 as well, just because, again, I theorize this is a contract obligation to do a Clyde cartoon, and again, the overpowering designs. It just wasn't a cartoon they had their hearts in, and you can kind of feel it.
Yeah, it's definitely not the worst, and it's definitely not the greatest either. It's just mid, I guess, mid-level. I don't know, whatever the kids would call it. But in any case, that will do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And until next time, take care.
That's all, folks.
Well, Clyde, how did you make out in your history exam?